been on time also. Good afternoon, everybody. Happy to have this launch session, session 2, on I Care for Worker Welfare on behalf of Nivasa, ECHO, and also on behalf of JLL. So I'll just give a quick introduction for those people who may not have joined last time. Nivasa is an architectural NGO, and we work to enable humane and dignified living conditions for both the urban and rural poor. ECHO is a platform. Their main thrust is move knowledge, not people. They are very well renowned throughout the world, and predominantly they operate on the health sector. For the first time, we would like to extend this for the welfare of the workers using this platform. And JLL, of course, everybody knows, is a very reputed real estate company. And for the first time, we are piloting this initiative, I Care for Worker Welfare, on the ECHO platform for and with JLL. So what I will do, we will, without much ado, we will go into our session 2, which is our actual session, because it's the first time we will be having a case presentation. So let's go right into the presentation. Can you all see this? Can you see my slide?
Yes, we can.
I can see that.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a 12 session program across fortnight. So today we are going to, last time we did have an introduction session. So today we are going to do an exciting topic on worker conditions world over and awareness on that. So we will have a 5-minute, 10-minute recap of what happened last session. And after that, a 30-minute didactic on the construction working conditions world over. It is filled with a lot of information. We will try to stick time to the 30 minutes. The presentation at the end of it will be given to you all. So anytime you can refer to that presentation. After that, we will have a 5 to 10-minute discussion on the presentation itself. Anybody has any value adds to give, because we are also learning as we do this work. So any insights, those of you who have worked elsewhere abroad, that would be really nice. Then we have the case-based presentation. This is the thrust of ECHO learning, where everybody knowledge is shared, and everybody shares knowledge, everybody learns, and everybody basically learns and shares knowledge. And so this is a Harvard-based approach, where whatever issues we face, any part of our work, if we share it, and if we share and discuss about what are the conditions and what the conditions were and what the challenges were and how you overcame it, others can also give their 2 bits on similar situations which they would have faced, and then the learning is collective, and you can apply it across your projects. And so that is the power of this case. So I would request everybody to participate in it. After that, we can have a discussion, and then comes this is the first part of the program. The second one, of course, we want you to be trained to reach certain aspects of worker welfare to the workers, and that will be the training toolkit. We will be handing over the toolkit at the end of the presentation by the weekend or probably Monday, which you can then reach out to your workers either directly by yourselves or through the contractors. We will discuss later in full detail as we go along, and any question and answers, and we can wrap it up. So this is a 1.5 hour session. We started 10 minutes late. We will try our level best to stick to our time, and if there is a small time overrun, do bear with us. So what we ran through last time was about an overview of the program. The intent is that we have an outreach, we create an awareness in all the spokes, which is JLL team here, on construction worker and living conditions, and how construction worker, living and worker welfare are truly interlinked. And that if we reach out on worker welfare activities, any one of the stakeholders can do it. And even if you reach out on the worker welfare through you all to the workers, you will see a benefit. It is our huge belief and also our experience that the issues which you face in site, which is to do with productivity, attrition, mistakes on site, attendance, and on such health, I mean, absenteeism due to health, all these would be impacted positively, which you can measure and monitor yourselves. So there was a didactic on leadership, which was presented by Ramesh last week. Leadership is not, it is about leading without title. It's not a quality. It's not a position of power or authority. It is about responsibility. It is not about commanding. It is about mutual trust and cooperation. So he talked about flexible leader. So there are three aspects to a flexible leader, which is a cognitive aspect, an emotional aspect, and a dispositional aspect. What is cognition? Cognition is using the power of the mind. So which is about the thinking part of the mind. It is recognizing that what has worked so far probably will not work any further. It is about incorporating, different strategies, which is being on your feet. It is about developing new solutions to the changing environment, especially with COVID, and we are talking about worker welfare. So new solutions have to be reached out. That is the need of the hour. The emotional part of a flexible leader is about being emotionally secure, about being so secure, high emotional quotient that we are able to listen to other people's complaints, grievances. We are not dismissive of their feelings, and having an emotional stamina for the future, for the things to come. A dispositional aspect of a flexible leader is the ability to stay positive and be very optimistic about the future. That does not mean that one should not be blindly optimistic. One should be a realist at the same time. That is the paradox of being a leader. And one should be comfortable in the ambiguity, especially the current situation which you're facing. And change is not an opportunity, is an opportunity. It is not a threat to be scared about. So these are the aspects of a flexible leader. So no matter how big we are, there is no choice but for us to adapt and grow. Otherwise, we'll become redundant. That was the main thrust of what he was saying. So it is about dynamically adjusting ourselves to a new normal around us. It doesn't mean that you move from a higher truth to a lower truth. And let's not fight change. So now coming to the I Care for Worker Welfare program, what we have seen in our work and what we have studied WHO reports also is that the working conditions, living conditions, and worker well-being together impact the worker mental health and physical health. This is not only true for workers, it is true for employees of all grades also. But with respect to the construction industry, what we have seen is that just working only on the working conditions, which anyway is under the control of the contractor, or working only on the living conditions, even if you do a good design and a good building and good surroundings, it is not enough. So what we have seen is that we have to work together on the working conditions, living conditions, and worker well-being. What happens there is that most of the challenges which you face at site, like absenteeism, worker productivity, and worker attitude, all these can be traced back to these three conditions: working, living, and worker well-being. So while it might be very difficult for us to change working conditions or living conditions because there are too many parameters and too many stakeholders involved, what is under our control is worker well-being. So what I as a person can do, I as an NGO, I as a project manager, even though the workers don't directly report to us, we have seen that an individual can reach out to the workers. Their situation is terrible. We will be seeing what the conditions are world over. And that if we reach out certain aspects of well-being, say hygiene, health, and so on to them, it will also work positively for your project. So it's not a waste of your time. So today we will be focusing on construction workers' working conditions world over. So this was a study. The next 4 or 5 slides, I will run you through a study from the International Labour Office based in Geneva. They had studied some 4 or 5 countries and situations of migrant workers. So this is a summary of that study. There are different kind of migrant workers. There is international migration, internal migration like we face in India or China. There is temporary migration, circular, permanent. You all would be more aware of that. So there are workers or employers, mainly employees rather, sorry about the mistake there, sent abroad for temporary periods of time by the employer. There are workers with valid permits, without valid permits. Some of the workers go because of, most of the workers actually go because of economic conditions only. There are certain war refugees with or without valid permits. And there are environmental migrants. These are people because their farmland has dried or there is no water or whatever, because of the livelihood is affected, then they become migrants. So what are some of the common conditions and shared challenges despite the varied nature of challenges? There are still some common conditions, commonalities which we saw across. So one is economic commonality. What we should understand, so we were trying to understand the complicated, why is it very complicated to address the worker problem? What is it which is stacking? So we can say there is subcontracting, there is economic aspect, and then there is the informality of the structure of the sector. So coming to this economic conditions, see, the industry is rooted in a place. So by nature of construction, it has to happen in a place. So then what happens is it requires different kinds of technologies, different kinds of challenges, different kinds of people and skill sets. And this itself calls for migrants, different, because they are a floating labor force. The industry is also very highly sensitive. This construction industry is highly sensitive to the economy. So what happens is, as the construction or a mobile labor force, the industry is very well dependent, with being rooted in a place, it's very dependent on migrant workers. And what happens when things are going well, it's good for everybody, but these workers become expendable when the economy gets affected. So they are a flexible labor force. So I want so many numbers, I want so many people for this period of time, and afterwards you let go of them. And since the construction industry is pretty booming, what is being predicted is that the demand for migrant workers will only grow, because ours is not like a mechanized, like a car industry. There is not high degree of mechanization. So there will be skills or shortages, rapid urbanization, and huge investment in different states on infrastructure. So this is going to lead to a greater demand for migrants. So what also happens, that because a single migrant is dependent on his, because of labor laws or immigration laws, he's dependent on a single employer. So the migrants become very extremely reliant on their employers, and thereby they are very much susceptible to abuses from the employer. The subcontracting nature of our industry, so it leads to a lot of subsidiaries and intermediaries and subcontractors. It leads to a lot of flexibility, which is the strength, but then it becomes very difficult to track responsibility, accountability in anybody. It is unclear. It is a situation where it is unclear who is responsible for safety, who's responsible for workplace provisions, and then who is the actual employer. And what happens is all the risks are downloaded onto the workers especially. So what happens sometimes when you have subcontracting, different people, different subcontractors, the safety conditions, the wages, everything differ from worker to worker, given different, just because he's hired by two different firms. So this is how it is completely disaggregated and fragmented nature. Then the other commonality is the informality of the structure throughout the world, whether it is construction firms, informal, the labor, buildings or settlement, the economy is informal, everything is informal. This leads to a lot of illegal building practices. And what happens, because it's illegal, in market data, the surveys, it doesn't get captured also, the level and extent of these illegal practices. Informality leads to illegal renovations, demolitions, illegal financing, and so much, which we have seen in many movies also. So sometimes we do take care and work. We can employ a formal workforce with work permits and everything. But then the zoning bylaws, occupational health and safety, local building codes are flouted enormously across. So what also happens that, the contractor may be a very formal guy, but then formal as in he's legal and he's hired, but he hires subcontractors, and some of them may not be registered, and they will hire migrants, and then there are practices, fired, hired, not registered. So all these things are happening because of the informality of the structure. So what happens is that migrants and when I say migrants, it's of course internal migrants, because India is heavy on internal migration. So fair, decent and safe work gets impacted. Wage theft. So what are the barriers? What happens? We have seen that across there is wage theft um, by the employers, and the worst hit are the workers. They are the most in need of the money, and they are the worst hit. There are very dangerous employment conditions. Then there is false employment happening. There is casual work happening, subcontracting, which is what we discussed just now. Then illegal fees are collected by the employers. Many times migrants are not even aware that they have to pay so much fees. They are promised, say, 50,000 rupees, where they would get 10,000 rupees here in India. If I'm talking about an Indian migrant abroad. So what happens is that then there are so many hidden fees. They sell their house, or they sell so many things, their land, and go there thinking that they'll bring some money back at the end of the year. And year after year after year, and country after country, everybody falls prey to this. They have to pay a lot of hidden fees. So the labor recruiter, the police, whatever it may be, there is a lot of job insecurity. Once the market dips, then the guys who get axed are the workers. So the subcontracting also leads, it's a very conscious way to stop, which has been done to stop collective representation and bargaining, which is a basic human right also. So to stop, unions and all from functioning. Then the nature of the industry is also that there is an on-job injury fatality quotient is very high. This is a barrier to fair, decent and safe work. They don't get any support. Employment insurance. Recently, yesterday or day before, the government has announced in India that there would be much more safe practices on this account. There will be one card for migrant workers and so on. But they do miss out on subsidized housing and job training. So far, that has been the reality. I'm hoping that it will get better as we go along. And then they are really, really vulgar. It's vulnerable. It's completely disproportionate vulnerability which the workers face. In many, many counts, like we have seen, it's a condition of bondage, in some cases forced labor, and so on and so forth. In some countries, there is unfree labor, which is bonded labor. There is trafficking, especially in Africa, Middle East countries, some parts of Asia also, especially Malaysia, Thailand, and all face this a lot. So also there are informal recruitment channels, which all of us are aware of, and that is also a key barrier to decent, safe, and work conditions and fair work conditions for the workers. So now, what is the construction industry world over? So one of the largest employers we know is the construction industry. 7% of world's employed are from the industry, 30% of which world over are women. So out of 170 countries which were analyzed, India is the country with the highest number of construction employees. Let us go on to see whether working conditions are also proportionate to where we are in this. We are in the top of the 10 actually. So what we did was we took up, we based this presentation on the International Trade Union, one of the main sources of information for us was from this International Trade Union Confederation. It is mainly working on egalitarian society, human rights and non-discrimination at workplace. So it's a global voice for the world's working people, not only the workers. So on a list of 144 countries, they studied on the respect for worker rights. So this is on a scale, they put it on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 being only sporadic violation of rights, to 5, actually 5 plus, no guarantee of rights. Probably Myanmar now would probably be no guarantee of rights currently. So there is 1 sporadic violation, then repeated violation. Regular violation is rated 3. If it is systematic violation, it's rated 4. Rated 5, if you're graded 5 or rated 5, there is no guarantee of rights. And if it's 5 plus, there's a complete breakdown of rule in the country. So you'll just see how it is. So Africa is at nearly like regular violation of rights, 3.77, close to systematic violation of rights. Middle East and North Africa is a high systematic violation of rights. Europe is at, we always know, generally better than the rest, 2.5 or something. And Asia Pacific region, it's at a systematic violation of rights. So this is an overall view of what's happening world over. And who are the best? So there's no surprise. Austria, Denmark, Germany, even New Zealand is one of the better off countries. So Austria is one of the country with very least violation to worker rights. There's paid holidays up to 43 days. And they make it a point to hire 1 disabled worker for every 25 workers across the industries. In Denmark, there is very strict discrimination at hiring or termination, and salaries are set to a collective, by a collective means of agreement by certain unions and all, and they have 25 days leave. Germany also, worker priority is high, and then it's the only country in the top 10 to have a minimum wage of nearly 10 euro an hour. But what we see, India being the highest in terms of employment of construction workers and construction workers all over. I mean, I don't mean only migrant workers, but newly in the last few years, India has got a distinction of being one of the worst countries for human rights. So it's ranked at 5, along with, say, we are competing with some countries like Kazakhstan and Egypt and Zimbabwe on worker rights. So these are some of the countries you can go through in detail. You got an idea. What we will do is the next few minutes, we will see some of what we were able to get information is about, India, of course, we all are aware, UAE. Then we try to take 1 country from each one of these ratings, 1 to 5, and see what is the working issue regarding safety, working hours, minimum wage, and leave policy. And we try to collect information. So in rating 4, Malaysia is better than us. In UK, we did get some information, but not enough to be able to put it. So we left off rating 3. But then we took Switzerland very recently, I believe 2020, they have moved from rating 1 to rating 2. I was very surprised about it. We took up Singapore and Switzerland, and then we checked about the safety, working hours, minimum wage, and leave policy as working conditions. So, and then we tried to also see whether what does the law say there, and what are the ground conditions. So we will talk about safety. In Switzerland, so there are lots of information available on safety. Very, very stringent in Switzerland. In Malaysia, very also safety now is, I think it's pretty good in many of these countries where they are very specific on hats, boots, belt, how the equipments and should be stacked and so on. So now it has become a pretty good, and our hope is that eventually we'll next session we'll be talking about the living conditions. Our hope is that we should move the living conditions to where safety is currently, at least. That is our game. And as with everything, good is what keeps us from getting better. So safety can get better, but law wise, it's quite things are all quite in place. So we try to see what is safety, what is happening in reality. When reality, then we have to do net check and a news check and so on. So there's a lot of information. Out of 12 bulletins, we got 6 on death of a construction worker. Times of India, just a quick check. This is what is happening on ground. So probably on high-end construction or top guys, top construction where you're all involved, safety might be very good. But lower down, it's something which can really be improved. Singapore, again, we saw, many news. If you say just take 3 months, November, December, even December is just 2 more. So many work, though the laws are in place, this is the reality. So many people falling down to that. Last year, we knew, last year also, I mean, that is our experience. BMS, there was a worker and it never came out in the open, not in the paper. So I don't know. These are things which come out in the paper. We don't know how much more is happening, which we are not even aware of. So when we see stories, workers get hurt and then there is a nexus happening with the contractor and with some doctor who says he has no problem or leave is not given for him. These are the cases which we found a lot of them. In Singapore, this is what is happening, which is at a rating of 3, right? 3, one of the better countries, supposedly, yeah. Malaysia, yes, it's almost Malaysia, interestingly, very recently, 2018, they brought in more stringent conditions. All the labor unions are coming together, asking government to pass. They came together and said, give us some guidelines. And also they have passed some very nice housing guidelines, 2018. The safety number, but in terms of safety, these are all like 140, 160, and these are the documented numbers on deaths and injuries. So what could be the causes? Work environment, the technology is constantly changing. So the workers probably are not trained to deal with the different technologies. And construction is a highly risky job, heights, machines. And then for workers, it is a language barrier also to boot. So these are all the main causes why safety accidents happen. Then we will come to working conditions. See, working conditions, what we realize is that, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Somehow we think working longer hours will make us extremely productive. In a very highly physically dangerous and physically strenuous environment like construction work, 12 hours of working back or, back-breaking work. It's not easy work. So we have seen throughout, I don't know Katrina is from which country, but it seems like, wherever we see the situation, what they are talking about is about fatigue, anxiety, mentally they are ill, not happy, depression, so on. So that's what is happening. And there is a correlation. But what does the law say? Switzerland says on an average per week, you should not work more than 41. India is at 48 hours with not more than 9 hours a day, not more than 5 hours at a time without a break. This is the latest law which came, labor laws 2020, October, I think it's come out. Malaysia, not more than 48 hours, not more than 6 working days. Singapore, 44 hours a week, not more than 8 hours a day. India, I think it is 8 hours, but I have to double check this data. Yeah. UAE, it leaves it to the private sector and still mentions about 7 hours of working because it's very hot there. So, but UAE, what you see is many youngsters, this Devender was 26 years when he died of heart attack. So many people now in Qatar, there is this football match or something coming up, right? So World Cup. So many undocumented cases and documented cases of workers dying of heat stroke, dying of heart attacks, all youngsters. So many people saying they're not able to sleep at night. And if they are not sleeping at night well, then what happens is that they are not attentive at site, mistakes do happen. And we have seen that it is a very dangerous place to work in. So mistakes do lead to bodily injuries at the least, and loss of human life. The other thing is that long work hours, these guys resort to alcoholism. So how else can we forget our body pain? I do know that we have a choice, but this is something not only one guy has said, many of these guys have said. So in Singapore, 70% of our construction workers work overtime. Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indians work overtime. 70%. About 23% work for 12 and a half hours or more in a single day. We know what is the condition here. You will know better. So this was according to a work fatigue study by an NGO there. It's called Transient Workers Count 2. So that is the NGO which has done an extensive study. Yeah, very recently as November 16. So all these data which we collected is all last few years only. Yeah. So there have been this is a HBR study which says that chronic fatigue, stress, depression, sleep deprivation, alcohol, smoking, all these are negative consequences of long work hours. Also heart diseases, BP, so many things. And yeah, so myocardial infarction, we thought it's a big term, but actually it's about the heart. So, poor physical health, lots of health issues, all is related to long working hours. And then absenteeism, when you put in many, many hours day after day after day, if you work double time, you may get the extra money. They are very much in need of money, but then it leads to absenteeism. In some cases, companies have seen their insurance costs rise up also because of this. So then if we take up minimum wages, a construction worker in Switzerland per month is, if you Indian equivalent of 5 lakh rupees. So we were also joking that we should probably move there. I don't know the ground reality, but this is what the law says. Malaysia, it seems very strange that for 30,000 per month, people are going from here to Malaysia. Singapore, there is no prescribed minimum salary as per the government Ministry of Manpower. In India, interestingly, this has also come very, very recently. Per day, the government of India has passed some labor, this thing. The connection, the connect or the reference is given there. There is a government order as of October 2020. I don't know how many of us are aware. I wasn't aware that per day minimum rates have been set at, they have divided us into 3 zones, A, B, and C, different cities. So the unskilled worker has to get 427 rupees to up to 639 per day. Semi-skilled is 500, ranging up to 700. Skilled worker has to get anything from 600 to 777, and highly skilled up to 845, depending on the city. UAE has no laws formulated on the amount. So the reality is that many people, wage gets cut, gets sucked into, I don't know which are all the people they give the money to. There are lots of unpaid dues which we keep hearing in the news. Yeah. So even during COVID time, a lot of things came about payment. So this is one, especially in, there was a lot of workplace deaths, accidents resulting in fatality in Singapore. That is November to December. This is COVID, post-COVID or whatever. There it is a little bit post-COVID. And interestingly, Singapore, the proportionate, the number of people who have fallen victims to COVID amongst the workers is completely disproportionate to what their other population, and they are facing flack for it, and they are changing their laws because of that. But still, it is a very sad fact. That to keep them cheap, we have to exploit. We pack them into trucks, we pack them into dormitories, and now when a crisis hit, they were talking about COVID, these guys have no buffer. So many of these guys, this is a Pakistani worker, Hassan, who says, I hardly have any food and there is no support, no money. So they're talking about dignity and they are reduced. This is about COVID time, especially. We have to, when nobody comes, so he was talking about when the help didn't come, which is very sad actually. This is a one-off, I hope one-off situation, COVID, but it is happening. We try to get what is happening latest. So across UAE, there are now lots of newspapers covering news like captive workers escape from the housing compound. So many workers are dying and workers protest and workers fear being abandoned. So this is just news after news after news on workers. And then they are not able to come back because of not being paid. Then we come to leave policy in workers. So Switzerland says 28 years of casual leave, then they have maternity, paternity applicable across. Malaysia says 8 days casual leave, but they have to be employed for 2 years, 12 days if employed for 2 to 5 years, and 16 days. Singapore laws are applicable only to Singapore citizens, most of it. They just leave it to the employers to decide. India's, it says 7 days, 17 days casual leave and 14 days sick leave. But then again, it's about the, you don't hire them for any length of time. You don't hire them for a year. Then they are not applicable from job to job. UAE is very clear, 2 days a month. Yeah, and 30 days. So some of the leave policies. Yeah. So COVID, this was a situation across, because they are not they need money badly, but they're not having any sick leaves because they're not paid for it. And then they will hide their sickness and go to work and then put everybody else at risk. So yeah, this, too many hours we saw leads to all these things. So then there was a study which was done. We think housing is very important for workers and so on, but we said, okay, what do the workers want? So this was a study done in Singapore, but we realized informal studies which we had done earlier before COVID also is the same. They talk about money. They say that, we want our salary to be paid on time. There should not be, short payment, because they are shocked by the short payment which is happening. Again, they talk about, salary deductions. They're talking about exorbitant agent fees, local or international, and misrepresentation of employment. Then they will say that there are employment term conditions and then terminate them, just before they are supposed to get, for no rhyme or reason, because they're supposed to get a huge sum of money. So again and again and again, they're talking about different forms of exploitation or different types of need in terms of only money. They're not talking about being exploited as much as they're saying that please give us our medical leave, please give us access to salary. So medical care, food and housing came. This is a proportional diagram which says what is important in their minds. So when we consider ourselves, what do we want? We want career growth, we want independence, we want a lot of money, we want a swanky office, we want a gym in an office, I want my kids to be taken care of, or a creche in an office, and so on. This is what, and I want a career growth. I want to be part of that. I want to be identified with it. I want our company to get the jobs compared to our competitors, and so on and so forth. There's so much that this is how we look at our professions. And what do they want? What they want is something which is just their minimum wages, because their family is so dependent on them. Just some minimum leaves, decent working hours. These we have put in clean water. They have not said that. So what we are talking about, basic minimum, that workers have to be treated with dignity at work. They are as human as any one of us. They have families waiting for them. Safety is very, very important. Thank you very much. So we finished that didactic. How are we on time, Anita? 3:50. I'm 10 minutes. Yeah, I'm taking my half an hour. Yeah, so we can have a discussion on this. I'll stop sharing it. I will put it on we will be putting it on Google Drive. We'll be sharing the presentation. Anytime you want to refer, you want to correct us, please do so. Please give constructive criticisms. Yeah. So now, would anybody like to discuss, ask us questions, anything on what we have discussed so far on the working conditions world over?
Akhila, Shivkumar here.
Yes.
This was a very good insights for all of us to know as to how other countries are. I really liked the information which you have collected and gave us, presented us here. And yes, we are aware of whatever you have presented in India. I think communities like us who are required to, make a decision to, uplift all these workers is what we also feel. While laws are there to an extent, they can only do something to an extent, but we spirited, corporates and communities will have to,
Yeah.
stretch our helping hands or whatever we want to call it as and do better than whatever laws are expecting.
Correct. If
And
we,
I was surprised to see,
yeah.
that, countries like Singapore and all, do not have a minimum wages act, and labors are abused in so-called developed countries. Also, is what
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
saddening to see.
Correct. I would have expected at least Singapore and all, but because I lived there for 7 years, I was aware of the other side of the story. Yeah, but yeah, now we are closely following up Singapore. But what they do, the government is taking steps now. Yeah, but still, they are the other side. There's no inclusion, nothing. So that's why I keep saying, if we don't do, no, they are all the odds are stacked against the workers like this, and it is world over. So it's not like we are only doing this thing. So one is taking comfort and okay, it is happening. Another is saying, okay, can I do at my level something about this, because these guys have no voice at all. Yeah, so that is the whole thing. Yeah.
On a lighter note, instead of being a CEO in India, I'd rather be a construction worker in Austria.
Yeah. Yeah, we all wanted to go to Switzerland, He said, oh, 5 lakh rupees if it really happens. So what are we doing and sitting out here? That's correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Also, Mr. Shivkumar, on the chat box, he's mentioned about working hours. He's mentioned in construction sites, 8 hours per day, extendable up to 12 hours, but a worker should not work for more than 60 hours per week. This is as per BOCW rules.
That's right.
48, now they have changed a little bit. Vishal? Vishal?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So
Yeah.
if you, this is the latest
This
law.
is the latest BOC.
No, October.
Yeah. October.
Yeah, October.
The new labor code. You're talking about the new labor
Yeah,
code.
new labor.
What is it? What is it there?
It's the BOCW. We will share the document in the email, sir. According to the BOCW, it says 48
Yeah.
hours.
So, Shiva, we have
No,
some
48
of
numbers is right. A worker should normally not work in a workplace for more than 48 hours. Yes, but in the previous version of the BOCW rules, with overtime, it is extendable up to 60 hours.
I think even now it is like that, but there is this OSHA's one, which is overriding.
OSH
So there are,
code, yes.
so we will send you the full document. We have that
Sure.
PDF. Actually, it's very important. Safety and all they have mentioned quite a bit.
Correct.
BOC, in conjunction with the OSHA is what has to be read, I believe.
Yeah.
But in BOC, there's not much change, but you have to read it in conjunction. It's a long document. We will send it to you. And in case
Sure.
your team is able to analyze and give us more insights on it, it would be really nice, because we'll also be learning from that.
Yes, there's one more point which I wanted to mention to you that you said that workers are left out with a lot of benefits. You mentioned a point about that. In fact, I think millions of rupees are left with government, provident fund accounts.
Yeah.
And people, construction workers don't know that they can go and claim that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of money which goes as POCW cess.
The cess,
And,
that's what everybody asks us also. What happened to the cess? What happened to the cess?
I don't know. Not even one person got any kind of benefits from it.
Yeah.
Maybe certain states, conscious governments have made some contributions on deaths and all, but most of the governments don't even tell about all these things. I don't know where all. It's been more than close to 70 years. I don't know where all that money went. And
no, it's supposedly still there, Shiva. And the government is trying to do something about it. Yeah, sorry, Abhay. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So what is happening is that everybody is questioning because a lot of money is going, and it is a huge amount of money which they are having at their side, so to say. These NGOs are all lobbying. So most of the NGOs are working on that aspect, that all the money should get to workers. The government is also now trying to latest one. Many of the things are which are happening because of the migrant. I mean, because they all came into light. They were or the overnight whatever lockdown. No? So because of that, there have been good things also which are happening. So let's hope that the money goes to the workers. Actually, yeah.
Okay.
All right. So,
Sir, just to add,
huh.
in Pune at least, I have known couple of sites where BOCW cess was used to feed the workers during the lockdown period for a couple of months.
See,
And even before the lockdown
Yes.
started, the workers who have been registered with BOCW, at some locations, at some sites, they have been provided with PP kits by the government. So some action was there, but right now post lockdown, nothing is there. But these are the two initiatives which I have seen. So just wanted to share this for a larger forum.
Yeah, you know what, Abhay? See, when it comes to disaster, no, even in housing, we have seen that, people step up like anything. And that is also only in terms of crisis we step up, because it shakes the conscience of a nation like that. But then we are not working on the dignity aspect, right? So what happens, you're giving them, nobody likes, obviously if I'm hungry and after 2-3 days somebody gives me food, I'll take it, I'll eat on the street. But the point is, it doesn't make me feel any good about myself. So that is what the whole thing. Yes, as a society, we have to step up and do that in terms of in the time of crisis. But why wait for the crisis? First of all, yeah. Anyway, that is my separate passionate topic. But first of all, it shouldn't have happened. You cannot have so many millions of people not even in the radar of the government. So you cannot do a 4-hour lockdown kind of a thing, but anyway, yeah, once it happened, I think the civil society and NGOs stepped up like anything and did give, because it just shook us. But what I'm saying is, let's not wait for any such crisis. Let's use this crisis now to do on an everyday basis, just reach out to workers and ensure basic dignity. When I talk to, say, Shiva, as much polite I am to him, am I polite to the worker on the site? So that is what I keep telling, that, that basic dignity, and it can be in small things also. So that's what we are aiming to get at, actually, that don't wait for the crisis. Let's just reach out and ensure worker dignity. So should we move to the case presentation now?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Abhay and Mr. Shivkumar. I will be presenting, Mr. Javed will be presenting the case. I'll be sharing my screen. Are you there, Mr. Javed?
You may need to unmute yourself, I think, Javed.
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah, Javed is there.
I'm audible. Yeah.
Yes,
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 Javed,
sir.
you're audible.
Hello.
Go ahead and present.
Yeah. Yeah. Hello.
Yes, sir, you're
Yeah,
audible.
Yeah. Actually, I'm working for a residential construction building. It contains 13 numbers of blocks. Means each block contains 25 story. Okay. And we have around 25 acres of area. And we have around 1800 numbers of manpower workers. So we are getting very difficulty to manage that the tobacco usage of tobacco. That workers are often using the tobacco and spitting all around the site. Okay, and that flats and that flooring and all that it's damaging like anything. So we have conducted many training sessions as well as the counseling sessions to them. But still we are to be improved that performance means that we cannot able to control that spitting and that the usage of tobacco. And that security guy is also very active, but still we are facing a lot of difficulty. So I just I needs a few advice from you all to how to tackle and how to make my site hygienic. Yeah, this is from my end.
Thank you, Mr. Javi.
Maybe Akhila and maybe the entire Nivasa team and Eco team, I would like to, make this question a little into an expanded area. Not only, tobacco, but substance abuse is a problem in the construction sites. Most of us, I mean, most of the workers feel that, they need some kind of concentration at work. And if they are, they feel that, if they are having some kind of habit of eating, chewing tobacco is, a very basic for it, because most of 99% of the workers have got this problem. Besides this, we can definitely expect during Diwali time, people, that is what we see, but, we see about this substance abuses during Diwali time, but for sure during the, any other time also, we can expect them to be, having this kind of habits. Alcohol is something which we all know that, most of them, have this habit of consuming alcohol almost every day, and they get into a brawl in the construction site. So overall, it's not only limited to tobacco. While Javed is talking about maybe in terms of quality, because they this kind of spitting inside the site might cause aesthetics problems and all to the construction site. But there is a large amount of risks lies with the workers' health itself, and because of this intoxication, they get into brawls with workers' community among themselves, and there are fights happening, and we have enough of cases to show that they are seriously injured. We put them into hospital, many other issues.
So Shiva, there are a few things which we have done. I will share some experiences. One in IKEA site in here in Bangalore, what Shapurji had done, I can share that. What they did was they had a designated, instead of stopping them. So what happens now with sorry, what happens here is that only the carrot, the stick method does not help. That is where the good news is we are giving you on spitting, on tobacco, and on alcohol PowerPoints, which will across the week after week after week, which you can reach out to these workers. And it needs an awareness in them again and again and again. So you keep having these awareness programs, keep showing them what it does to them, put posters in their dining area, in their living area, in the kitchens, everywhere, wherever you want to. We have poster designs for that. And it is reinforcement like any other, like I'm trying to bring down my eating habit. It's taking a lot of time. So, I got into a little bit of overeating during COVID. So now it is taking that much time to get out of a habit. So, and at that rung, because they are facing far more challenges, like I had mentioned, that working hours and all that is leading to substance abuse. So it is a far more complicated. So amongst all our problems, what we felt was this addiction is what takes a lot of time and effort. It is not enough with just one awareness. So we have had NIMHANS conduct talks to workers. Probably 1 out of 20 workers would this, which I think it's still a good number. Those who are alcoholics cannot change, but those who are on border, and what happens, even if one worker is not inclined, the friends he has, because they are living in a community and very tight community at that. So they are, they are pulled into it. So a constant awareness and engagement with them, which is not more than 1 hour per week, but forming them into groups, their own DOMs, their own this, and creating champions out of them, all that we have seen helps, which we have worked on our project personally. Some of the measures, like I said, in IKEA, they did a designated zone. So in the master plan, they themselves created IKEA. So we are not responsible for that. So they created a zone where they can go and smoke. So don't make it easy, ban it everywhere. But if you ban it completely, it doesn't really work. So do it in a way that they have to take steps to go and take pains. Don't make it easy for them. That is what even not only workers, even smokers amongst us, we say don't keep the cigarettes very easy. So there are some simple rules like that which we would be covering in our toolkits. Our toolkits have separately on spitting. Again, ours is a spitting nation, so there will be, this one is like the pan and the spit is like something now. I'm hoping that COVID will change that bit. That is one thing. Then tobacco and then alcohol. These are three things which we are covering in our toolkit, which we'll be giving you. In one of the projects, LNW, what they did was the shops are not, even in JMC, what we did was don't make it easy for the shops to sell any of these things. So the shop which is provided inside the campus, there is a rule that they should not sell. Of course, they keep it hidden and all, but the campus goes, so we put it in our checklist and we tell them the campus has to go and do sudden checks and daily checks and check every nook and corner that any dated items are not kept because it's harmful to health. The second is that these anything addictive items are not kept. Say alcohol or this thing is make it illegal, illegal and as a rule. But what happens immediately outside, there is with your control zone of control, there is a shop which crops up and they sell and we can't do anything about it. These are the reality, but make it difficult for them, I would say, and educate. Instead of saying don't do it, doesn't work, because we are all talking about adult men. We don't understand their problems, and it takes one amongst them for them to, so there is only certain things which we can do, which is why so on one hand we will be very strict, we as in I'm saying you guys can be very strict about the working hours and working methods and safety and so on, but on the other, if you engage with them, like we had Chai Pe Charchas weekly once, where we just brought in whoever was the stakeholder, the contractor, some of the cooks, and these days used to sit and talk inside their working living area. So then it is like we are going to their place and we are giving them that kind of respect. So these are all the intangibles which have worked. So when you're reaching out these awareness programs, you go to their home and reach out. You do it in their dining hall, or you have a media room there or something, you do it there. These are the things which will have an impact.
Also, in one of the projects where we worked, usually laborers, they get a day off on Sunday and they have a lot of free time. That is when they also tend to get together, drink and all that. So we used to involve them in other kind of recreational activities like, say, origami or painting and things like that, which also gave them a break. So it was more like therapy for them, and it also brought them together. So when they're all together involved in some kind of activity like this, then we start a conversation on, say, how many gutka packets do you empty in a day? So if they say 10, then what are the timings that they consume this in? And can you reduce 2 per day? And then so like that, every week, if you just involve them in some kind of activity while they're doing something, when they're all together, it can be an informal conversation with them, and then form a group like Akhila mentioned, and then see if they can, bring down gradually. Then I think it will be and also, each of them, when you make them into a group and you have like one leader for the group, they'll be, so they have some kind of support system. They're not alone in this. So that will also help them, is what certain things like that worked in one of the projects that we worked here. Of course, it might not work all the time, but yeah.
Yeah, you have to use 2-3 methods to do that. So you can create volunteer leaders amongst them per block or something like that. So it's all about, so when you talk about it, just empower them, let the solution come from them, kind of a thing. So we facilitate all those. We can share the tips, and then of course a tool what is toolkit manual also has that. How many times do you do that? And then somebody to record it, which can be the campus. Just involve those guys. And really, I'm telling you, if you do that for a month, no, just weekly 1 hour or 2 hours of engagement with these guys, but don't do it in your workplace. That can be a very strict, normal, no nonsense toolkit talk kind of a thing. But here it can be an engagement, softer aspect. And that really works wonders, because you're just treating them as human beings. That's all. Adults and human beings. We are not talking down to them or doing anything of that. So that is what actually helps in the longer run. But it doesn't help full addiction. And I can tell you the alcohol problem is the biggest of all problems. Just the nature of work, they are away from family. All these make it the toughest for you to get any significant impact. That I can tell you. This is one of the toughest, but other things will improve overall over a period. That's why you guys being there on site most of the time, so weekly engagements and all that will definitely, that 1 hour is going to help you in your work like anything. So we'll give you all that, yeah, toolkits and
Right,
all.
I had a couple of points to mention, but I don't want to be the lone speaker here. There are a good number of senior guys here, like, Shagul is there, Surya,
Yeah, you can share. I'm sorry,
Abhay,
you have
all
to
you
share
guys
your
are there.
experience.
You all will have to be,
Yeah.
engaged. I don't want to be a lone speaker here. Please, Vijay, Shiva, Javed spoke, but you all should speak. But there are a couple of things which I want to mention here. So Nivasa team and Eco team, probably you'll also get to hear the other side of the story. You might have heard the stories of workers a lot, but you also will have to hear the stories of those guys who are managing the workers. Please don't, it's we are being a human beings. It is good. It is the right thing for us to treat our workers also as the human beings and have that compassion towards them. But also, please remember that it's not a unique thing, or it's not one of its kind where workers come and say, "Tere ko gaad denge, tere ko udhar kar denge, idhar kar denge." Just be aware of it. There is equal amount of fear among most of the engineers or contractor engineers who will not go and always talk to them with authority always. There are enough number of cases where workers have abused physically our engineers. So there are enough of cases across India.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that it's always workers are bad. No, it is equally, we are all human beings. It remains whatever. The second part is that no matter how much ever you frisk the workers, we don't know substances like tobacco and all. I don't know. There might be a secret Santa who will be throwing tobacco from the skies. We have tried everything. Nothing works. There will be someone who will be throwing packets of tobacco from the skies. We really don't know where it comes from. No matter how much you frisk, it will still be there in the construction site. That is something which you have tried. The other point which I wanted to mention you is that giving them smoking area and all, certainly yes. I think there are some sites which Surya might talk. There is free areas which are there are smoking zones which are created in construction sites. Some workers come. Most of the workers don't come because of that authoritative. They think that this area is only for engineers and all. But there is no such rules made. It is communicated to them, but they generally don't come. On the other part of it is, even if we consider a smallest of interior fit out site, say 50,000 square feet, on a peak day, during the peak time, there will be about 300 people in the construction site. Out of them, you will certainly find at least 60% of them are smokers. Practically, it is impossible to give them a smoking zone. But trust me, when they go out for a meal in the noon, whatever place where be it shop or wherever they are eating, that is as good as smoking zone. So that's how it goes. I just wanted to mention these points.
Yeah.
I encourage others like all of you to speak. Maybe Shagul, Surya, Vijay.
Others, you want to share your experience on the same problem? We'll keep to the same case, which is tobacco addiction. Surya is here on the line, I think.
Is there?
I'm audible.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm traveling. That's the reason. Yeah. So we have few of our sites where we have dedicatedly kept these smoking zones. So these are the places only the supervisors and the managerial level staff on site come and use. But obviously, the workers don't, because they come to a point of this thing, like the supervisor might look at them, or he might say, "You're not working here; you're spending a lot of your time here." So there are such kind of intentions. So that's the reason workers don't come to such places. And apart from that, if we look at these tobacco, so this is a critical point which we have been trying to stop quite from years. But ultimately, the workers, they manage to get anyway. Even they put some of these tobaccos in the lunch boxes which they carry. They put it in the helmets. So they'll manage to get these tobacco stuff anyway, even if we check at the security.
Yeah.
So this is how it is.
Yeah, good that you stopped at, at that. But we find you don't know where all we have found tobacco packet.
So other thing also, no, there are these de-addiction programs which are run by Alcoholic Anonymous and
Alcohol Anonymous.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do call these NGOs to give a 1 hour, couple of hours sessions.
But it doesn't work. I can tell you.
It doesn't really work.
Yeah. See, we do it like once in a while and we just leave it off. Okay. So many times in our own projects, we have not had the funds to be able to bring them over again and again and again. So we just stop with an awareness talk. It's sustained effort, left, right, center, top, bottom, everything we have to do again and again. But then there are certain things which we can do in a consistent manner, like the posters and all, keep creating awareness. One, Amir Khan, they love movies. Okay, so something where something to do with alcoholism. We have a Satyamay Vijayate show for the workers. We put it in the toolkit. So you show them on the TV and all that stuff, and keep on putting posters and everything. That's it. I mean, and then say that, okay, they are adults at the end of the day, and they will have to take the bottom line for whatever they decide to do. Make it hard. Like keep the plates by size small, no, for the dieters. So something like that. Only we can only do so much. That we have to accept. That is where the serenity prayer also we have put in your PowerPoints. So God give me the strength to, change the things which I can and accept that, that I can't change everything. There are some things beyond our control. So that is one thing which we have to have in mind. We can try so much, but at least we have tried, it should not be for want of trying that these things don't happen. So we will give then next week, the next session itself, we will, our toolkit can be tobacco then. This session we have a hygiene toolkit, which you can give it to people. So Anita will now, run, we are 420, no? Yeah, Anita, you will have to run them through the toolkit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just share the screen.
Yeah.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is an overview on the toolkit. As you all are aware, this is our program structure. There are two parts to this program. One is we as Nivasa team members training JLL team on certain topics, like the first session that we had today was work condition. Same way we have few more topics like living condition, master plan guidelines, kitchen guidelines, etc. So this will be the training sessions that we have with JLL. And the second part is what JLL is going to do with the workers, either directly or through the contractors. So that is what we call as outreach. So what we'll be doing is we'll be giving you a docket which has, I think, 9 topics which are all related to health and hygiene. I'll just show you how the folder looks like. So this is an outreach toolkit docket which has 9 topics: hygiene, yoga, alcohol, tobacco, bed bugs, UTI, mental health, nutrition, and food wastage. So each of these topics has a folder. In each folder there are 4 compartments. One is presentation, posters, videos, and worksheets. So presentation is what you use while doing awareness sessions with the laborers directly. And posters is you can put it up wherever relevant to the topic. For example, if the topic is hygiene, the posters are about health and hygiene. You can put it up in, say, toilet areas, kitchen, dining, etc. So if it's about mental health, then you can put it up in their dorm rooms. That way we have posters for each and every topic. And videos, again, it can be if you have a movie day like Sunday, during lunch if they watch movie, or in the morning if they watch movie, they're all very short movies. I think maximum time is, I think, 10 minutes. So it can be played right before the movie or after the movie. And there are worksheets to monitor the whole program, keep following up. For example, if you have a session on hygiene, you keep following up on the workshop itself, and also on the update as to if they're cleaning the toilets, if they're cleaning the kitchen. So there are checklists and monitoring checklists. So I'll just show you how the folder looks like. So this is the outreach toolkit. So there are 9 sessions. The first session is hygiene. In hygiene, you have 4 compartments. One is presentation, worksheets, videos, and posters.
I cannot see anything on the screen.
Oh.
I see a blue screen.
I am also seeing a blank screen.
Okay, 1 second. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, I can see.
Yes, it is visible now. The folder is visible.
Yeah. So this is the docket, outreach toolkit. If you open this, you have all 9 topics: hygiene, yoga, alcohol, tobacco, bed bugs, UTI, mental health, nutrition, food waste stage. So if you open hygiene, you have presentation, worksheets, videos, and posters. In presentation, you have the full presentation, which Vishal will be running us through. And then we have worksheets where you have checklists for each of for example, for room, you have a different checklist, monthly cleaning checklist for rooms, for kitchen, bathroom, toilet, common areas.
Anita, your screen is not visible.
Oh, it's not visible again.
When you switch between 2 applications, the screen sharing stops.
Okay. Can you see now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So we'll anyway share you the full docket, but I'll just run you through all the folders, main folders. In videos, you have 6 videos which are in Hindi, or majority of them are Hindi, and some of them do not have any voice or anything. It's just music with animations and things like that. And we have posters which can be put in different areas. Now, Vishal, would you like to take over? You want to present the presentation?
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
So it's a great pleasure for me today to run you all through the presentation part of the entire folder that we will be handing out. As Anita ma'am introduced to you all, the first folder that we will be sharing with you all is the awareness on hygiene. So in this module, we will be talking about hygiene with respect to sanitation, with respect to toilet, bathing, hand wash, room, kitchen, dining area, and with respect to cleanliness for cleaning and cooking staff. So this is the overall agenda of the program. We will begin with an introduction and a serenity prayer, introduction to the entire program and as to what we're doing with this workshop, affirmations, ice-breaking activity for us to sort of set the stage and be connected on a similar level. And then we have the awareness, which is the core of the entire workshop itself. And then we would recommend you all to take a break. And then finally, we'll come to the action plan where we will discuss about how to take whatever we've discussed in the workshop forward. So through this PPT, what we're trying to do is that we're trying to demonstrate what good hygienic practices are and how they will benefit the workers themselves. The contents of this PPT might seem very basic to us, but to a construction worker, it is something that needs to be ingrained. Living in unhygienic conditions has been normalized for them. So it is the onus is onto us to denormalize that and bring them to a healthy and a hygienic lifestyle. So we begin with the serenity prayer. As Akila ma'am was saying, the serenity prayer sort of more than praying to any god, it is about self-awareness. It makes the worker, it makes the participant in the workshop more aware of what he can change and what they can't change and what is under their control and what is not. The prayer basically asks for self-confidence and courage to change certain habits and move into newer realms. We have affirmations. Affirmations are basically a few statements that will make the worker more aware of a few nice things that they have in their life. For example, their job, their career, the support that they receive from their family and friends, and the food they have on their plate. So ice-breaking activity right now, if we as trainers go to the trainees and say we're going to train you, there will be a necessity of sort of ice-breaking between the two parties. And this can very effectively be done by asking a few questions. For example, do you think your rooms are clean? What do you use to brush your teeth, whether you use a neem twig or do you use a toothbrush, and etc. Please do feel free to add your questions. Sometimes some answers that the workers give can lead to different questions themselves. So this is just a basic framework, but while the workshop is going on, please do feel free to change these questions as per the scenario there. Then we throw the question out to them saying, what do you think you can change to make yourself feel and be clean every day? And there can be a small discussion with this respect. Then we start talking about what personal hygiene is and what are the benefits of personal hygiene and how to ensure personal hygiene in their everyday lives. So we start off by saying doctors say that labor-intensive jobs, or if you're living in hot, humid climate, then you have to shower daily and wash yourself every day. Don't use the same shampoo for washing clothes and bathing. And these are a few criteria that they will have to follow to achieve personal hygiene. What are the bad practices and what effects do they have on their body? For example, not bathing regularly can lead to body odor. Not washing hands after using the toilet can lead to infections, stomach infections, etc. Not flushing or cleaning the toilet might lead to further infections. Not washing clothes or bedding frequently can lead to problems like bed bugs or fungal infections or things like that. If you don't store your food properly, then the food might get spoiled, and during times of compulsion, one might consume the same food and fall ill, and not brushing the teeth will lead to bad breath and things like that. This is sort of a checklist that could be given out to the worker saying, wash your body every day, clean your teeth twice a day, washing your hair with soap and shampoo at least once a week, washing your hands after going to the toilet, changing to clean clothes, hanging clothes in the sun and sun to dry, and things like that. I would like to reiterate that all of these things are some things that we do every day, and our onus is to denormalize these things for the construction worker that we work with. Then we move on to awareness of hygiene with sanitation and how hygiene can be achieved with respect to sanitation. So we first start off by telling them what are the bad effects of improper sanitation. For example, in this flowchart, we see how not using a latrine, not using a toilet can lead to their food being contaminated. It's an entire cycle. Now, again, we have studied this in school and colleges and wherever, but these are not some things that the construction worker is aware of or is bothered about, even if they're aware of. So putting this sort of a graphic up and telling them, look, this is what happens, then the construction worker becomes more sensitive to these things, and there is a hope for some sort of a change. Then again, we have a few guidelines and a few suggestions that you could give to the workers with respect to sanitation, how they can achieve hygiene with sanitation. For example, using proper toilets and hand washing, then what happens if the food gets contaminated, and how diarrhea and how cholera and all of these things can lead to death. And all of these things can be spoken about in the workshop itself. With respect to toilet, it's as much as it is about the person who is cleaning the toilet to maintain the toilets, it's also as much onus on the person who uses the toilet to maintain it in an orderly fashion. Again, we go through a few more criteria about how to maintain hygiene in the toilet. I'm sure if once we run through these points, you guys will be able to deliver it really well. These are the few places in the toilet which can be contaminated, and how after touching these places or being in contact with these places, they can sort of they have to be careful. For example, if they're touching the door handles often, and then they have to wash their hands even if they just touch the door handles and even the bucket handles and things like that. Good habits of using a toilet is to wear a slipper, wash hands and feet, always flush the toilet. I would like to iterate once again that these are some practices that we do every day without thinking twice, but these things have to be reiterated to the construction worker, and that's exactly why we've put them up here. What are the do's and what are the don'ts? These are some things that we will have to demonstrate to our participants in the workshop. Then we go on to how hand wash is important in maintaining hygiene. We talk to them about how not washing hands can lead to so many other diseases, and how hands are basically the carryway between the germs and the body, and how hands are basically the one such thing that sits between the germ and your body, and how you have to maintain your hands in a very cleanly fashion. Again, we have sort of a checklist that can be given out to the workers, saying, when do you have to wash your hands? When is it recommended that you wash your hands? For example, after work, after changing soiled clothes because you've touched soiled clothes, before and after preparing food, after using the toilet, blowing your nose, before and after eating, after touching an animal feed or even animal waste, before and after caring for someone who is sick, before and after treating a cut or wound, after handling garbage. So these are a few. This can also be printed out as a poster and put up in places where there are basins to wash their hands, or on toilet doors and things like that. So how do they maintain their rooms in order? We've spoken about toilets, we've spoken about hands, and how to wash hands frequently, and we've spoken about all other places. But one room where they live, if that is not maintained tidily, then nothing else sort of matters. So this is one of the most important aspects of maintaining aspects where we have to maintain personal hygiene, I feel. Again, we have the do's and don'ts. I'm sure if you all go through this just once, you'll be able to deliver it really well. Then similarly, kitchen is one place where, all our food is cooked here. And if this is not hygiene, then we're really, really prone to infections. There's sort of a stark difference between what our kitchens look like and what their kitchens look like has to be brought about to them. And unhygienic kitchens should be sort of denormalized for the construction workers. Again, we have do's and don'ts, like any other aspect of hygiene that we've spoken of before. Again, there's a checklist. This is the dining area checklist. Then we have some sort of guidelines for the cleaning staff, who cleans the kitchens, the toilets, who does the laundry, and all of that. This is the awareness for the cleaning staff. They have to always wear boots and gloves. They have to wash their clothes regularly, and they have to wash their hands and feet regularly.
Vishal, sorry to cut you off in between. I think we might have to rush.
Yeah. Again, we have the do's and don'ts. Similarly, we have do's and don'ts for cooks, people who cook. So that's about it. This is something that we do every day without thinking twice. And I think we will be very, very successful in sort of denormalizing all of these habits to our construction workers.
We request you all to also please give us a feedback. The link will be put on the chat box. Kindly take 5 minutes of your time to give us feedback. Thank you.
Yeah. So just summarizing the whole thing, we'll pass on this toolkit, and it's up to you to figure out certain ways of reaching out to the workers. Consistency is the key. You can come up with your own ideas, but I would request that at least 2 times, if you can reach out within the next 2 weeks, which is, I'm asking you to reach it out to workers in 2 sessions, basically. Same thing, 2 sessions. And then you have to build your ecosystem. Not everything can be done by you. Already your work will be piled up. So the whole thing is to see how you can ask the campus there, how you can get the contractors. They are very good at coming up with ideas also. How to ensure you create volunteers amongst the blocks or amongst the floors, and to ensure that this is run by them. So eventually you trickle down, you empower the worker also. So you can have a few leaders from their end who will be reaching out the same awareness again and again, because consistency is the key for change. The second thing an interesting thing about behavioral change is that it's a neuroscience tidbit I would like to share with you before we close. See, if the change has to come from you, 1:100,000 neurons fire in our brain. But if it is imposed, if somebody is telling me that I have to stop smoking, it is 1:10,000 neurons. So it won't work unless and until we create the motivation or the need for change in the worker in this particular case. It's not going to happen. So it's a tough job only. That's why we have the serenity prayer for ourselves also. But that is not something which is a reason for us to give up, because they do need awareness. A lot of things in villages also it works. It's awareness which works. Awareness. Yesterday also I saw an article where the DC of Orissa, which is the place which has some pangolins are getting, what is that, kidnapped or something like that. What is it? They just take it and sell it. What is the term, Vishal? Whatever it is. So so the DC got the help of all the villagers. The villagers, according to the story, at least were not aware that these are 5 kgs of pangolins will give you lakhs and lakhs of rupees or something like that. And so they were taken to many other countries and all that. And then they created awareness in the village, and thereby they started creating guards and security amongst the villagers. And then she's been able to cut down the poaching, hugely. So this is one story. So we can use cross learning and apply it to our this thing. So, but each one of us can bring about the change, but you create how you can take the toolkit, get the contractor on board, and how often you can reach it out and make a system out of it. You guys are the experts about it. So what we will do, we will give you the toolkit by Monday. Do reach out twice before we reach next time, and let us know any feedback on what else you might want or what you want us to cut down or so on. So we'll focus on hygiene. Next time we will take up tobacco and give the toolkit. We also want a discussion on some feedback on your experience on reaching out, which we'll incorporate in our next session. And 2 weeks down the line, we are going to talk about living conditions of construction workers world over. So thank you very much for your time. If we are keeping time, we would be able to keep time from our end. Also, we are exceeded by 10 minutes. I do request everybody to come on time next time. And we will from our end also keep to time starting and ending. Yeah. So thank you so much, guys, for spending a Saturday evening with us. Have a great weekend, and we'll meet you in 2 weeks' time.
Thank you, Nivasa and Eco team. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Shiva. More voices next week, please. Next weekend. I mean, next fortnight. More of you. Okay, should speak up. Thanks, guys. All right.
Thank you for a wonderful session.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jayal team. Bye-bye.